So, dear learners, we have been discussing about the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. We discussed the background under which the African Charter was adopted, and then we also discussed that what are the rights that have been ensured, and we found that the rights that have been mentioned in the African Charter, they are reflecting African values, and the challenges and the grievances and the ambitions, legitimate aspirations of the people of Africa, they have been, they have been reflected in the charter. We also discussed that the one of the unique features of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights is that it also has mentioned duties. Now we are going to discuss duties, and in the duties also you'll find that the unique African values, culture, custom, tradition, they all are reflected in the duties also. So Article 27, first of all, every individual shall have duties towards his family and society. So, this is the individual duty that he has duty towards his family and society. The state. So, what are the institutions? First of all, a person has his or her duty towards family. Number one. Number two, towards society. Number three, the state. Number three, the state and other legally recognized communities and the international community. So it is not only towards one's own family, society, and state, but it is legally recognized communities and the international community as a whole. It means duty towards mankind, duty towards humankind. Then, number two, the rights and freedoms of each individual shall be exercised with due regard to their rights of others, collective security, morality, and common interest. So, first of all, you see, every right has a corresponding duty. And what is being emphasized? The rights and freedoms of each individual shall be exercised with due regard to the rights of others. So, it means it will be the duty of every individual to respect the rights of others. So, a person will not be claiming only rights, but his corresponding duties, they are important, and that is why he or she has to perform her duties, and that duty means duty to respect the rights of others. And it also includes, what the rights of others, collective security again, and morality and common interest. So the common good is something that is to be promoted. It means that selfish, individual, egoistic, atomized interest of an individual cannot be promoted. So what is to be seen? That the rights of others are important, collective security is important, morality and common interest is also important. So it means one's rights cannot or should not be in conflict with the common interest or the interest of the general public. Article 28. Every individual shall have the duty to respect and consider his fellow beings without discrimination. Discrimination, African people, especially, you see, of course, colonialism has been a universal feature, but you'll find the African people, they were victimized as slaves. Slave trade was a very common thing in Africa. Their resources were looted, plundered. These people were discriminated against. So that is why, this is being reflected in the charter through this provision, that Article 28. What does it mean? Every individual shall have the duty to respect and consider his fellow beings without discrimination, and to maintain relations aimed at promoting, safeguarding, and reinforcing mutual respect and tolerance. You see, it is not only tolerance. In the Western values, in the Western liberal values, you will find tolerance is emphasized. And in the non-Western values, you will find mutual respect is important. So, in the Western values, for example, every day we see that people, sometimes people are going to burn Bible, sometimes people are going to burn Quran in the name of freedom of expression and all. So, this is something that is not acceptable according to African Charter. So, what should be there? What should be, reinforced? It is mutual respect and tolerance, not tolerance alone. So tolerance means, in that sense that you may tolerate somebody even if you don't like him. But here you will find mutual respect. That is something very positive. That is being emphasized. Not only tolerance, but mutual respect as well. Article 29. The individual shall also have the duty, number one, to preserve the harmonious development of the family and to work for the cohesion and respect of the family, to respect his parents at all times, to maintain them in case of need. Interesting, you see. What is being emphasized? That it is the responsibility of every individual or duty of every individual to preserve the harmonious development of the family and to work for the cohesion and respect of the family. Family is such an important institution according to African values that it is being mentioned everywhere you see. Not individual, not person, but family is being highlighted. To respect his parents, it is the duty of every person. You see that an international arrangement is going to that kind of minute details of duties. That what is the duty of every individual? To respect his parents at all times. If they are weak, they should not be sent to the old age home, but they are to be respected at all times. At the same time, they are to be maintained in them in case of need. If they need us, if they need their children, so that it is the responsibility of the children to look after their parents, and that is at all times. Whether the time is good or bad, you cannot say that my condition is not good, so that is why I cannot take care of my parents. It is the duty imposed by the this charter, that the parents are to be respected in all circumstances and maintain them in case of need. Another important duty that is being mentioned here is to serve his national community. It is the responsibility of every individual or duty of every individual to serve his national community by placing his physical and intellectual abilities at its service. So, whatever abilities a person has been gifted with, whatever potential a person has got, so to serve his national community by placing his physical and intellectual abilities at its service. So it means all the potential that a person has got, whether it is intellectual ability or the physical abilities, they are to be there for the national, for to serve the national community. Again, another important duty is not to compromise the security of the state whose national or resident he is. So, this is everywhere. It is expected from every citizen that he will be loyal to his country and he will never compromise with his national security, internal security, or external security of his country. Then, another important, duty that is being imposed by this charter is to preserve and strengthen social and national solidarity, particularly when the latter is threatened. So, when the national solidarity, most of the time, by the onslaught of the colonial forces or outsiders or violent forces, aggressive forces. So, if that is there, so what is to be done? To preserve and strengthen social and national solidarity, particularly when the latter is threatened. To preserve and strengthen the national independence and the territorial integrity of his country and to contribute to its defense in accordance with the law. Again, this is the duty of every citizen living in Africa or the, who are the members of this, African Union, that to preserve and strengthen the national independence. The national independence, because they have got national independence after a lot of sacrifices. They fought against colonialism, colonialist forces. Thousands of people died, butchered, slaughtered, and then they got independence. So ultimately, national independence is such a precious thing, so that is why it's to be preserved and strengthened. And the territorial integrity, again, it means foreign occupation should not be allowed at all. Territorial integrity of his country and to contribute to its defense in accordance with the law. Whenever there is an onslaught, an attack, an invasion, it is the duty of every person to fight to defend his own estate. 6. to work to the best of his abilities and competence, and to pay taxes imposed by law in the interest of the society. You see, this is also being mentioned, that to work to the best of his abilities and competence. So, for example, if a teacher is there, so he has to teach honestly, and or whatever potential he has got, he has to apply all those potential for the people. And then it is the responsibility and the duty of every person to pay taxes imposed by law in the interest of the society, because these taxes are basically going to the national exchequer, and then this national exchequer, when it is having this kind of amount through taxes, it is being used for the betterment of the public. To preserve and strengthen positive African cultural values. Again, you see. So, what is the responsibility? That to preserve and strengthen the positive African cultural values in his relations with other members of society, in the spirit of tolerance, dialogue, and consultation, and in general to contribute to the promotion of the moral well-being of society. You see, we already discussed that in the African tradition, why the African court was not there. In the African tradition, we find that they try to encourage out of court settlement for most of the things. For them, what is more important? That custom, tradition, negotiation, and then conciliation, dialogue, discussion. Through this, all kind of disputes should be resolved. They do not want to follow the Western legal system, under which you will find a very costly, expensive, time-taking judicial process is involved for getting justice. So that is why what is being highlighted here, that positive African values. For positive values, it means where that this adversarial or legal kind of tussle that you will find in the court, that is discouraged, and rather conciliation, dialogue, and mediation is encouraged. So that is why they are trying to highlight, to preserve and strengthen positive African cultural values in his relations with other members of the society, in a spirit of tolerance, dialogue, and consultation, and in general to contribute to the promotion of the moral well-being of society. That is the duty. Then to contribute to the best of his abilities at all times and at all levels to the promotion and achievement of African unity. So to work for the African unity is the duty of every citizen living in the member states. Now, after this, we are going to discuss, part 2, that is the part where we will be discussing about the implementation mechanism, because, that is another important part. So far we discussed rights and duties, and you see the list of rights and duties in the African Charter, quite impressive, and also many unique and different kind of rights they have been also mentioned. At the same time, duties have been also mentioned, and they are different from many of them. These rights and duties, they are different from that are there either in the UDHR or in the two other regional conventions that we have discussed, whether European Convention or American Convention. So that the unique values and the aspirations of the African people are reflected in these rights and duties. Now we are going to discuss about the implementation mechanism. So part 2, that is chapter 1, article 32 to 44. What kind of things are there? First of all, this part deals with measures of safeguards and the establishment and organization of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. So you see, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Now we are coming to institutional mechanism. That was the constitutional or legal provisions that we discussed, rights and duties. Now what is the institutional mechanism? So a charter, a document, an arrangement will be judged on the basis of the enjoyment and realization of the rights that are there. Otherwise, you may, a charter can have best kind of rights, but on when it is going to be implemented, you will find that these rights are dead letters if they are not properly implemented. So that's why, this part is important to understand what kind of implementation mechanism or institutional mechanism have been developed under this charter. So this The commission shall consist of 11 members chosen from amongst African personalities of the highest reputation, known for their high morality, integrity, impartiality, and competence in matters of human and people's rights, particularly consideration being given to persons having legal experience. So you see those who will be the member of African Commission, it will be an 11-member commission. And in this 11-member commission, the people, 11 members, those who are being elected or chosen, they will be chosen from amongst the African personalities of the highest reputation, known for their high moral integrity, impartiality, morality, integrity, and impartiality, or these are being emphasized, and competence in matters of human and people's rights, particularly consideration being given to persons having legal experience. Because rights and violations, protection, they all need a lot of knowledge of the law if you are going to promote the rights and protect the rights. The members of the commission serve in their personal capacity. It means they do not represent their nation. They do not represent their country. Once they are chosen to be the part of the commission, they will rise, or they are supposed to rise above parochial national interest. And they have to serve as the member or as personality who has been given very important responsibilities under the charter. Chapter 2, Mandate of the Commission. So what is the mandate of the commission? You will find Article 45, the functions of the commission shall be to promote human and people's rights in particular, to collect documents, undertake studies and research on African problems in the field of human and people's rights, organize seminars, symposia and conferences, disseminate information, encourage national and local institutions concerned with human and people's rights, and should the case arise, give its view or make recommendations to governments. These are the responsibilities they are being mentioned. To formulate and lay down principles and rules aimed at solving legal problems relating to human and people's rights and fundamental freedom, upon which African government may base their legislations. Cooperate with other African and international institutions concerned with the promotion and protection of human and people's rights. So that is again important job, because that collaboration and cooperation is must. Ensure the protection of human and people's rights under conditions laid down by the present charter. Interpret all the provisions of the present charter at the request of a state party, an institution of the OAU, that is the Organization of African Unity, or an African organization recognized by the OAU. Perform any other task which may be entrusted to it by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government. These are the jobs or the work assigned to responsibilities assigned to the commission. The commission is not a judicial body. This is important to remember, that commission is not a judicial body, and it can only make recommendations which are often ignored by the member states. This is the problem with the commission. So it's a body which can, which is not a judicial body, and that's why it is not very effective mechanism of implementing human rights. The commission was criticized by many for being a toothless watchdog of human rights implementation. It is rightly said that it was a toothless watchdog. It is a toothless watchdog. Why? Because it can bark but it cannot bite. So toothless watchdog in this sense, because when it is giving any kind of recommendation, whether they are going to be accepted by the states or not, that is not compulsory. Most of the time states ignore its recommendation, its ruling, etc. So that is why it was criticized. It led to the realization by member states to create an effective implementation mechanism. Keeping in view its weaknesses, the commission was not having adequate power to implement human rights or the rights mentioned in the charter in all the member states. So that is why this realization was there in the minds of the leaders, because most of the time it was being discussed that its recommendations are often ignored by the states. So the state try to quote their parochial national interest, and ultimately what happens that the ideals and the aspirations that have been expressed through the charter, they are not being realized. So ultimately that realization led to what? That the people started thinking of developing some better institutional mechanism, especially the leaders of Africa. So now the establishment of the African Court of Human and People's Rights. So African Commission on Human and People Rights was weak. So now what is happening? As the African Commission did not have judicial powers, the African Union through protocol established the African Court on Human and People's Rights in 1998, which came into force in 2004. So you see the charter has been there for a long period of time, but you'll find it is happening in 1998 and then it is being enforced in 2004. The court judges were elected in 2006. So, it started in 1998. It took 6 years to, come into force, and then after that, another 2 years. The court judges were elected in 2006, and since then, the African Court is working as the judicial wing to implement human rights. So now the teeth has been added to the toothless watchdog. Now the court consists of 11 judges nominated by member states and finally elected by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government. Again, like Commission, it is also an 11-member body. They serve for 6 years. That is their term of office. The African Court has delivered approximately more than 300 judgments and rulings so far. So since 2006, it is again interesting that around 300 judgments it has delivered. The Amnesty International notes the following distinctive features of the African Charter. Amnesty International is an organization that got Nobel Peace Prize as well, one of the largest network of human rights activists and scholars. It has its member in more than 100 countries of the world. So this Amnesty International, which is working 24 hours for the promotion and protection of human rights all over the world, it has highlighted the distinctive features of the African Charter. So what Amnesty International says about the distinctive features of the African Charter? The committee that drafted the charter was guided by the principle that it should reflect the African concept of human rights and should take as a pattern the African philosophy of law and meet the needs of Africa. That is being highlighted. So I told you, in the previous lectures as well, that this particular charter is trying to promote African values, and it has been mentioning the custom, tradition, and the values of Africa, trying to, glorify them, and also, through the inclusion of the rights and duties, it has tried to reflect the African values and all. It also recognized the value of international human rights standards that many African countries had already promised to respect. As a result, the Charter sets out to combine the specific needs and values of African cultures with standards that have been recognized as universally valid. The African Charter contains in a single document legally recognized civil, political, economic, social and cultural rights. Amnesty International is highlighting these are the distinctive features. Another of the Charter's distinctive features is that it recognizes the rights of peoples, such as the right of all peoples to self-determination, as well as the right of peoples to freely dispose of their natural wealth and resources. The African Commission has stated that there are no rights in the African Charter that cannot be made effective, because of this. Again, important. This was highlighted in a case it considered in 2001 relating to Ogoniland, Nigeria, where, it gave its ruling. That was the commission, not the court, you see. The charter is also unique in emphasizing the duties of the individual, that we had already mentioned, and the Amnesty International is also highlighting in its publication that the charter is also unique in emphasizing the duties of the individual towards the community and the state, and for giving people fleeing persecution the right not just to seek asylum but also to obtain it. So it is not right to seek asylum but also to obtain it. You can see the detail in the Amnesty International website that we have already given provided here, so you can read it, a detailed account of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Now we are going to conclude our discussion on the African Charter. So the first point in conclusion, you have to remember that the African Charter represents the aspirations and challenges of the people of the African continent. So for example, slavery, apartheid, all these things were there. Colonialism, imperialism, there was foreign domination. They were not able to utilize their own resources. Rather, their resources were being controlled by the foreigners. So that's why you see the African Charter had taken into account all these things, and ultimately it came out with this charter which represents the aspirations, that is the legitimate aspirations of the people of Africa, and also you will find the challenges of the people of the African continent. Another important thing that we have highlighted, and in the conclusion also you should remember, the African Charter unequivocally declares that it is committed to the elimination of colonialism, neo-colonialism, racism, and Zionism. It is specifically mentioning in the charter. So Zionism, racism, colonialism, neo-colonialism, they all should be eliminated. That is the commitment. It recognizes the family as the basic unit of society and seeks its protection and promotion. So again, different from the Western tradition of human rights, where you will find this is unique feature of the non-Western tradition, where not individual but family is being recognized as the basic unit of society, and its protection and promotion is being sought through this charter. Its monitoring and implementing bodies are the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the African Court of Human and People's Rights. So there are two institutions that are responsible for monitoring, implementing, or enforcing human rights that are provided in the charter. And these two bodies we have already mentioned, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and that was of course a toothless watchdog. Its recommendations were mostly ignored. So that is why there was a realization in the minds of the leaders that they should have more effective mechanism, and that's why they followed the principle of the court, and that's why you'll find African Court of Human and People's Rights was established. So, with this you can see that what kind of regional arrangements are there in the world, in the different parts of the world, to promote and protect human rights. We must remember, all these developments took place after the establishment of the United Nations. So therefore, the role of the United Nations in universalizing human rights, sensitizing countries and leaders to promote human rights in their respective countries or regions cannot be underestimated. So that's why, again, you'll find in all the charter, all the three convention and the charter we discussed, whether African, American or European, you will find that the UDHR has been cited in all these instruments of protection of human rights at the regional level. So that's why, that is also the significance of the UDHR. So in a nutshell, what we can say that, these regional arrangements, that the three continental arrangements that we have discussed, the European, the American and the African, they are the best guarantee of ensuring protection of human rights. So when the international community has to move from promotion to protection, this kind of arrangement, that is regional arrangement or regional mechanism to promote and protect human rights, are crucial. So with this, we are going to conclude our discussion that we have made in last many classes on the regional arrangements or regional mechanism to promote and protect human rights, in which we discussed three important regional arrangements or regional mechanism. Number one was the European Convention. Number two was the American Convention. Number three that we discussed just now was the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So with this, we are going to conclude our discussion on the regional arrangements to promote and protect human rights. Thank you very much.